I'm Zevy Hamburger. I'm an obstetric anesthesiologist. I'm one of the associate directors of OB anesthesia at the Icahn School of Medicine. And today we're going to set up a Belmont rapid infuser. So first thing I want to point out is the different equipment that we have in order to set up this infusing machine. So the first is obviously the machine itself. It's found in our OB workroom. The other two pieces is the disposable 3-spike set, which must be used for every Belmont setup. And the last piece is the optional Belmont bucket, which we use for larger volume transfusions. This is added after you set up the regular 3-spike. The first thing to do when you find your Belmont is bring it into a place where you can easily access both a plug and also the patient. The next thing you're going to do is turn on the Belmont machine. There's a switch on the back in the top. You turn it on. In order to access where to place the 3-spike set, there is a latch in front that opens up. When you take the 3-spike set out of the container, it may look like a lot of setup, but all we're doing is plugging where the arrows indicate. The first plug is an arrow on top, and it correlates with an arrow that's taped to the machine. If you do this first, it's usually easiest for the setup, and it clicks right in over here. The next step is putting the tubing inside of the tracks that are there, and they're outlined. The fluid tube is thicker with a thick blue outline, and the air tube is thin with a thin blue. Next comes the heating coil, which only plugs in one direction. Again, arrow facing up. It goes in like that. Last is one of the sensors. The last step is plugging the air on one side and the fluid on the other side of the control valve. If this valve is closed like it is right now, to open it, you can go to the screen where it'll say hold to open valve. When you press this button, it'll beep and the black valve will actually move to the midline, allowing access for the fluid tube to go in. Letting go will seal it again. This is what it looks like when you press the button to open the valve. Once the tubing is in the correct spot, then all you have to do is close the Belmont latch. Now it's time to prime the circuit and prime the line. So on this setup, there are 3 spikes. 2 are taller and 1 is shorter. The shorter one is used for your normal saline or your plasma light. There is a clasp, which is over here, you can adjust so you don't have any tension on the system. The goal is to keep the 2 tubes here, the air line and the volume line, the fluid line, straight when they're going into the Belmont system. Up here, we have a bag of normal saline ready to go, which we'll use for priming the circuit. We're first going to clamp the 2 blood lines, and then we're going to spike the fluid line. When you spike the fluid line, fluid is going to go into this small canister. This is your air trap, and it can fill up all the way, and especially in the beginning, you may want to fill it up because the priming sequence will use up a lot of this fluid. When we're done filling, we can clamp so no more fluid goes into it. Next, it's time to follow the instructions that are on the screen. The first step is just to press the prime button. This will automatically prime the internal circuit. As you see, it's using up a lot of the air, of a lot of the fluid. You may have to intermittently fill more. The next step is to actually prime the line to the patient to remove any air from the circuit. Now, right now, the attachment is just what comes in this box. Often we'll attach a high flow stopcock and a high flow extension to the end of this to provide a little bit more length to our patient. In obstetrics, the patient may be right near, so you may not need the extensions. It's just something to consider. Again, there is already one extension here on attached already. To prime the patient line, the line from the Belmont to the patient, again, just press the button. It just says patient line prime. The instructions are written on the box each time. It's quiet, but it's actually slowly priming the line. The goal is to get rid of all the bubbles in this line so we don't deliver any air to our patient. You may have to flick or hold it upright to control the bubbles. Once we've successfully primed the line, we press the stop button. Now there's only two more options on the top of the screen. Number one is to continue priming the patient line just in case you stopped it prematurely. Number two is to infuse, which starts the Belmont program up so we could actually infuse product to the patient. We're going to press the infuse button. So on the screen, we'll review in a few moments how to actually control not just your flow rate, but also the temperature, emergency flow rates, and also a volume bolus. But before that, I'm going to demonstrate how to change the small system to our large bucket system. What makes the Belmont tool helpful is for smaller volume transfusions, you can hook up blood and plasma and cryoprecipitate or fluid or albumin or anything except for platelets, just like a regular Y set for a warmer with this as your air trap. If blood finishes, there should be an audible whistle that sounds when the reservoir gets low. But this requires you to spike 1 or 2 bags of blood at a time, which for low volume transfusions is not onerous. For high volume transfusions, it may be more prudent to transfer to the larger bucket. The larger bucket comes as a separate attachment in a box also in the workroom. The components inside this package is the bucket itself, which we're going to place in the special bucket holder. There are actually tubes that come disconnected. We're going to attach these to the different sites to start. So you may notice 2 Ys and 1 straight adapter. Often we'll use the straight adapter for our plasmalite electrolyte solution or our normal saline. We do not use lactated ringer when we give blood transfusions because of the calcium content. So we plug in our Ys and our blood sets. Make these tight. Even though these will not be pressurized, we do not want to disconnect when you're hanging blood. So in order to use the large system, you have to start off with the regular set first. Then we can swap them out. It's hot swappable, meaning that once you clamp this off, we shouldn't have flow, and we should be able to attach the bucket directly to the current circuit. So you do not have to set up a new system. You don't have to change or turn off your Belmont Rapid Infuser. So what we're going to do is detach this small setup and reattach instead the larger bucket system. So we want to close off our fluid line so this does not spill as we're attaching. Then you press the button and detach. The air line does not need to be locked. It should just unscrew a lower lock and detach. We can slide this out, detach, and put it off to the side. First, you can attach your fluid. All you have to do is press it in and it clicks when it's ready. This is unlocked. And next, we take off the lower lock and attach the air line via lower lock. Our new system is now ready to go. What we'll do is we'll use the saline from here and start priming the larger line, again using the single spike. When you attach the bucket, you may get an air alarm as there may be a little bit of air between the alarm here, but the system will detect the air and you can reprime as needed, but often you don't have to reprime. You'll notice there's gradations on the bucket so you can see how much volume is here, but there is also a counter so you know how much was given to your patient. You don't have to keep track as much. Now that our bucket is semi-full, the filter will let the saline out into the rest of the bucket as it's draining. And then we can restart our infusion. Now what we're going to review is actually how to use the Belmont interface to rapidly deliver blood products or fluid to your patients. After you check your blood, you're going to spike blood and fill your bucket with the blood through these attachments. There are optional filters to attach if they're available, but there is a filter built into this system. Once you have your bucket with some product or some fluid in it, next what we're going to do is use the screen to control how much we're giving to the patient. So now our line is attached to our patient. Our bucket is full of product. In this case, we're going to use saline to simulate the product. And we're going to use our interface to control the flow of our blood products to our patient. There's a couple of important buttons to know. Right now, our interface, our system is stopped. Our temperature is low. If you do not need to give large volumes quickly, you can press the recirculating button called recirc. And what that's going to do is take the product from the bucket, put it through the warmer, and send it back up into your bucket. And what this is doing is warming the fluid that's in the bucket. Assuming you have to give large volume transfusions right now, you do not need to recirculate to warm the fluid, as high flow rates automatically warm the product in real time, so it's not necessary. This is more for slower flow rates, or if it's been sitting idle for a while and you're going to start off on a slow flow rate. There is a couple of different control buttons that you have to give your product. The first is a basic infusion rate control, infuse rate up and infuse rate down. The rate is located on top. That tells you what the rate is in real time. You also have your temperature screen, your pressure of your line, and the total volume infused. Total volume infused is anything that passes through this system. It may or may not be accurate to what you've been giving, especially if you're pouring fluid off to prime the system. Just keep that in mind. We want to watch both our temperature and our pressures, and we control our flow rate directly with the infuse rate up and the infuse rate down. It starts off with small number jumps, and then it goes up higher and higher. We're going to call attention to the pressure. It will automatically slow flow rates if it detects high pressure, say a kink in your IV or something is closed off in the line. We may have to give, or we may want to give, a discrete volume of medication. Our pumps have a bolus function, and it tells you the exact amount to give. Ours right now is set to 400. When you press the bolus 400, no matter what the current rate is, it's going to deliver a set amount of volume. It will tell you the volume that it's giving inside this square over here until it hits the 400. The total volume infused also reflects what's given, but this tells you your counter for the 400 mLs that you currently desire. It increases to a rate of about 200 mLs a minute as it's preset. So this is to give you a finite amount of blood product or fluid that is warmed at a specific rate. If the bleeding becomes more significant and you need a higher flow rate, you can still increase your flow rates with the manual button on top of what was given, and it's still counting the total volume that's there. And again, you can go up to the upper limit of the machine. Once it hits the 400 ml feature, then it will stop giving. Now on this, it hit 270 mLs a minute, and then the pressure alarm is going to go off, because it's hitting its peak pressures, so it'll limit the flow. The last button is for true emergencies where volume is of the essence and speed is of the essence. And for this, there's an emergency button that increases the flow rate. I'm going to take off the volume limiter for a second just to demonstrate the high flow rate. What this button does is it sets the flow rate from whatever flow rate you have to 500 mLs a minute. And it goes up as quickly as possible. And now it's going to try and increase the flow rates as rapidly as possible to get to 500. And it was able to hit because I took off the flow limiter. The Belmont system is actually capable of going up even higher than this. We can go up to 750 mLs a minute, but often the 500 is a good start in these drastic cases. It's important to watch your bucket to make sure you don't run out of volume or fluid as you're using this feature, because obviously you're going to go through the contents very rapidly if you're infusing at a very high flow rate. The system will detect if the bucket is empty, And obviously it's upon your team to try and keep things balanced as you're giving them.